When a group of bikers thought they could intimidate a disabled woman veteran, they had no idea who was watching. Just 20 minutes later, Navy SEALs arrived, and what happened next left everyone speechless. Welcome back to my channel. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories. The Texas sun hung high in the sky, glaring down on a quiet stretch of highway where dust rose lazily with every passing car. On the edge of town sat a diner that had seen decades of travelers, truckers, and locals pass through. Its neon sign flickered faintly, advertising hot coffee, cold pie, and the inside smelled of bacon grease and strong roasts that could wake the dead. For most people, this diner was just another stop. But for Sarah, it had become a safe place. Sarah was a woman in her late 30s, though her eyes carried the weight of someone much older. Her hair, cropped short for convenience, framed a face that bore both scars and quiet strength. Her wheelchair rolled smoothly over the cracked pavement as she made her way toward the entrance. Her leather jacket stitched with a few faded military patches that told anyone paying attention she wasn't. It's just another face in the crowd. She had served overseas, decorated for her bravery, and she had returned with stories she rarely shared, and legs that no longer worked. The regulars inside noticed her immediately, as they always did. "Morning, Sarah," the waitress called, smiling warmly as she pushed her coffee pot toward the counter. A couple of old men at a corner booth nodded respectfully. They knew her, respected her, and treated her as part of the fabric of this town. But today, there was something different in the air. The low rumble came first, a growl that vibrated through the diner's walls. Heads turned toward the windows as the noise grew louder, a chorus of motorcycle engines pulling into the gravel lot outside. Dust kicked up, tires screeched, and within moments, a dozen leather-clad bikers rolled in like they owned the place. They weren't locals, that much was clear. Their patches were unfamiliar, their movements loud and cocky, the kind of swagger that came from intimidating smaller towns and leaving chaos in their wake. Sarah noticed them, but kept her eyes forward. She had learned long ago to let noise roll off her shoulders, to save her energy for battles worth fighting. She pushed through the diner's door and made her way to her usual table near the window, adjusting her gloves as she rolled. But the bikers noticed her at first. It was just a glance. One of them, a thick-necked man with a handlebar mustache, saw the wheelchair, saw the patches, and smirked. He nudged his buddy, who turned, squinted at her back, and let out a laugh. Soon enough, the whispers grew louder. "Look at that soldier, huh? Don't look like she won many fights." Sarah ignored it. She wheeled up to the counter, greeted the waitress, and ordered her usual, a cup of black coffee and a slice of apple pie. But the tension was creeping into the room like smoke. The bikers strutted inside, boots clanging against the tile floor, leather vests creaking as they took up space. They were used to eyes following them, used to the fear and discomfort they caused. And when they saw that Sarah wasn't looking at them, wasn't giving them the satisfaction of flinching, their attention locked on her even tighter. One of them, younger than the rest, but eager to prove himself, swaggered up behind her wheelchair. He leaned casually on the backrest, his shadow swallowing her in. What kind of soldier can't even stand up? He sneered loud enough for the whole diner to hear. His friends roared with laughter. The waitress froze, clutching the coffee pot to her chest. The other diners pretended to look away, but their eyes darted nervously toward Sarah. Sarah's hands tightened slightly on her wheels, her knuckles paling, but she didn't turn around. Instead, she kept her voice calm and even. "I've stood taller than you'll ever know." That answer didn't amuse them. Another biker, stocky brute with tattoos crawling up his neck, grabbed her steaming coffee off the counter and tipped it onto the floor. "Oops," he said with a grin. "Guess you'll have to salute it." His buddies erupted again, their laughter bouncing off the walls. The waitress rushed forward with a towel, whispering, "I'll get you another, Sarah. Oh, don't worry." But Sarah stopped her with just a look, calm and unshaken. Steel in her eyes, the kind of steel that had stared down worse than this. And the waitress slowly backed off, unsure but trusting her. The diner fell into a heavy silence, the kind that pressed down on everyone's chest. The bikers grinned like predators who thought they had cornered their prey. To them, Sarah was an easy target, disabled, outnumbered, trapped. What they didn't realize was that Sarah was never truly alone. Her uniform might have been folded away, her boots stored in the closet, but the bond she carried with her wasn't bound by time or distance. She had a family that lived beyond blood, a brotherhood and sisterhood forged in fire. And if there was one lesson she had learned in her years of service, it was this: you might take down one soldier, but you never take them down without facing the whole unit. Sarah sat there, steady, her silence louder than their gears. Inside, she was already counting seconds. Guess she knew something the bikers didn't. Help was always closer than people thought. The silence inside the diner was thick, broken. Only by the scrape of boots against tile and the nervous clink of a fork on a plate somewhere in the back, the bikers had filled the room with their noise, their swagger, their cruelty. But the moment Sarah delivered her calm reply, the atmosphere shifted. She wasn't fighting back in the way they expected, and that unsettled them. Still, they pressed harder. The leader of the gang, a man with a leather vest emblazoned with a skull, pushed through his crew to stand face to face with Sarah. His beard was braided, his eyes cold and mean. He leaned down until his shadow loomed over her, his breath reeking of whiskey and cigarettes. "You should have stayed broken overseas," he hissed. "Nobody wants you here. Not your country, not this town, and sure as hell not us." Gasps rippled across the diner. That line had crossed into dangerous territory even for them. Waitress's hand trembled so badly the coffee pot rattled against the counter. One of the older men in the corner shifted, looking like he might stand. But Sarah gave him a small, steady glance that said, "Don't." She didn't need civilians caught in this. And then, from the back corner booth, a man rose. He had been quiet the whole time, almost invisible in the background. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a plain t-shirt and jeans, he didn't look like much at first glance. But there was something about the way he moved, precise and efficient, that made it clear he wasn't just another traveler passing through. His presence was calm, controlled like a storm waiting to be unleashed. He locked eyes with Sarah and gave her the smallest nod, one that only a fellow soldier would recognize. She exhaled slowly, relief flickering in her eyes for the first time. The man reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and dialed without saying a word. His voice was low, calm, almost casual. "Yeah, we've got a situation." Then he hung up, slid the phone back, and sat down again as if nothing had happened. The bikers laughed, mistaking his calm for cowardice. One of them jeered, "What? You calling the sheriff? He won't get here in time." Another added, "Maybe he's calling Mommy." They roared again, the sound ugly and sharp, but Sarah knew better. That wasn't a call to the sheriff. That wasn't a call to anyone ordinary. She knew exactly what had just been set in motion. Minutes ticked by. The bikers kept up their taunts, trying to chip away at Sarah's composure. They banged on tables, demanded music from the jukebox, made the diner their playground. Still, Sarah didn't flinch. She sipped the replacement coffee the waitress had quietly slid her way and kept her gaze steady. The man in the corner never took his eyes off the clock on the wall. Then, 20 minutes later, the sound came at first. It was faint, almost drowned out by the bikers' laughter. But Sarah heard it instantly, the low, commanding growl of high-powered engines, deeper and heavier than motorcycles. Gravel crunched outside as black SUVs rolled into the parking lot, their tinted windows glinting in the sun. Doors opened in near-perfect unison, and boots hit the ground with the unmistakable rhythm of discipline. The diner fell quiet. Even the bikers froze, their smirks faltering. Through the glass, 6 men appeared. They weren't in uniform, but they didn't need to be. Their plain clothes couldn't hide the way they carried themselves. Their rigid posture, the steady eyes scanning every corner, the way they moved together without speaking. Every person in that diner could feel it in their bones. These men weren't ordinary. They were trained, tested, and dangerous. They were Navy SEALs. And they weren't just any SEALs. They were Sarah's brothers. Her unit. The door swung open, and the first of them stepped inside. The air shifted instantly, like the weight of the world had just dropped onto the biker's shoulders. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. His eyes swept the room, landing on Sarah, then flicking briefly toward the bikers who had been tormenting her. The corner of his mouth tightened in the smallest smile, one that carried no warmth-only recognition of who the real threat was. The others followed, fanning out naturally, their formation silent but deliberate. They didn't have weapons drawn, but they didn't need them. Everything about them screamed power, precision, and readiness. The leader of the bikers took a shaky step forward, trying to regain control. "Who the hell are you supposed to be?" he barked, but his voice cracked just enough to betray him. The SEAL who had led them in didn't answer. Instead, he clapped a firm hand on Sarah's shoulder and spoke to her directly, loud enough for the whole diner to hear. "We got your message." "Captain," the word echoed like a gunshot. The bikers' faces drained of color. "Captain, this woman, this soldier they had mocked and ridiculed, wasn't just anyone. She had commanded warriors, these warriors, and now those same warriors stood in front of her, ready to back her without hesitation." Sarah's lips curved into a small smile as she finally looked the bikers in the eyes. She didn't need to raise her voice. "You wanted to know what kind of soldier I was?" she said softly, her words cutting sharper than any blade. "The kind who never stands alone." The room went still, the bikers' bravado cracking at the edges. They had swagger, they had numbers, but they had no idea what it meant to face a soldier's family, and now they were about to learn. The diner was frozen in silence. Not even the ceiling fan dared to creak as the Navy SEALs closed in, their presence alone enough to choke the bravado out of the air. The bikers, who moments ago had been laughing, jeering, and swaggering, now shifted uneasily in their boots. They had walked into a battlefield they didn't even understand. The SEALs didn't move fast, didn't need to. They fanned out naturally, surrounding the bikers without so much as a raised voice. It was like watching wolves circle prey that thought it had been the predator. Their faces were calm, unreadable, but their eyes, those sharp. Trained eyes never left the bikers. The leader of the SEALs, a tall man with short cropped hair and a jawline cut from stone, gave Sarah's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "We got your six, Captain," he said quietly. To everyone else, the words sounded casual, but to Sarah, they were everything. A promise. A vow. She wasn't alone, not here, not ever. The biker leader swallowed hard, trying to mask the fear creeping up his throat. He squared his shoulders, puffed his chest, and forced out a laugh that didn't quite land. "What is this? Some kind of show?" he barked. "We were just having a little fun." His voice cracked on the last word, betraying him. One of the SEALs, a broad-shouldered man with a scar across his cheek, stepped forward. He didn't raise his fists. He simply leaned close enough for the biker to see the steel in his eyes. "Fun?" he repeated, his tone flat and cold. "You call disrespecting a veteran fun? You call mocking a soldier who gave more for this country than you'll ever have the guts to offer fun?" The biker's jaw worked, but no words came out. The silence stretched until it felt unbearable. Sarah rolled her chair forward slightly, her calm cutting through the tension like a blade. "You wanted me to salute your spilled coffee," she said softly. "But here's the truth. You don't deserve even a glance from me. You've already shown the world exactly who you are." The room erupted in murmurs. The townsfolk, who had sat paralyzed with fear moments before, now began to stir. One by one, heads lifted, eyes narrowed, courage flowing back into them as they realized Sarah wasn't just standing her ground, she was winning. With her brothers behind her, the balance of power had shifted completely. The SEALs didn't touch the bikers. They didn't need to. Their very stillness was more intimidating than any brawl could have been. One SEAL leaned against the counter casually. His presence radiated the kind of danger that said he could dismantle the whole gang in under a minute if he chose. Another simply folded his arms, his stare so unflinching it forced one of the bikers to look away in shame. The biker leader finally broke the silence with a weak snarl. "We don't want any trouble," he muttered, his voice stripped of its earlier confidence. "Too late," the SEAL with the scar said, his voice low but heavy. "You already brought it." The words landed like a hammer. The bikers shifted uncomfortably, looking for an escape that didn't exist. The other diners watched, some holding their breath, others silently urging them to run. Finally, Sarah leaned back in her chair, her calm composure unshaken. She raised her chin and locked eyes with the biker leader. "Here's what's going to happen," she said. Her tone wasn't loud, but it was commanding, decisive, like she had given 1,000 orders before. "You and your boys are going to walk out that door, get on your bikes, and never set foot in this town again. Because if you do," she glanced at the SEALs, who stood silently like sentinels, "you won't just be dealing with me. You'll be dealing with all of us." For a long, breathless moment, nobody moved. Then, slowly, the biker leader dropped his gaze. He turned to his crew and jerked his head toward the door. One by one, they filed out, their earlier bravado stripped away, replaced by shame and fear. Their boots scuffed awkwardly against the floor as they rushed toward the exit. Moments later, the engines roared to life outside, but this time the sound wasn't triumphant. It was desperate, like a retreating army fleeing defeat, as the last taillight disappeared down the road. The diner seemed to exhale all at once. Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then louder, until the whole room was clapping, cheering, voices filling the space that had been choked with fear just moments ago. The waitress wiped tears from her eyes as she poured. "Sarah, another cup of coffee," her hands steady now. "On the house?" she whispered. Sarah raised the cup slowly, her eyes sweeping over the SEALs who had come for her, who had always come for her. Her voice was steady, proud. "To family," she said, lifting her cup in a toast. The SEALs raised their glasses. Mugs, or whatever they had in their hands, their faces breaking into rare smiles. For them, this wasn't just another mission. This was loyalty. This was love. This was the bond no one outside their world could ever truly understand. As the sun dipped low outside, casting long shadows across the parking lot, Sarah wheeled herself to the window and watched the horizon. She had fought battles across the world, had given more of herself than most would ever know. But today, in a small Texas diner, she had been reminded of something even stronger than her own courage. She wasn't just a veteran. She was a captain, a leader, a sister, and no matter what life threw at her, she would never stand alone. The applause faded into quiet conversation, clatter of plates returning, life resuming its normal rhythm. But for everyone who had been there, the memory would linger. The day the bikers messed with the wrong woman, the day the Navy SEALs showed up, the day respect, loyalty, and brotherhood reminded an entire town that true strength isn't loud, cruel, or brash. It's quiet, unyielding, and unbreakable.